Hello, everyone. Welcome to our open access webinar. Thank you for joining us today. I am Navanithan and I am part of the learning and content management team. Joining me from the learning and content management team are my colleagues Nikita and Olian, who will be supporting today's session. Presenting the session, we have our subject matter experts Bharat, Joanna, and Rinki from the open access team, who will be sharing valuable insights on various topics related to open access. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. If you have a question at any time during the content of the session, please use the Q&A option to send your questions directly to us. We will be trying to answer as many questions as possible during the session today in the Q&A channel. If we cannot answer all the questions, we will reply to you directly after the session unless you post the questions anonymously. For the best view, you may wish to drag the central bar on your screen to the right to enlarge the screen that we are sharing. And you may also wish to enable the live transcripts via the bar on the bottom of your screen. Now let's take a look at our agenda for today. In today's session, we will begin with an introduction given by Rinki covering the basics of open access, journal publishing types, and Elsevier pricing and fee waiver policies. And then Bharat will provide an overview on rights in access form and including the copyright options and how to complete the form currently. And it will be followed by a discussion on eligibility for agreements and the benefits on using the agreements. Finally, Joanna will walk us through the author responsibilities for payment and the steps to ensure proper payment processing. Now I'll pass the presentation to my colleague Rinki. Over to you, Rinki.
Just let me know if you're able to view
Yeah,
my
we are
screen.
able to see your slide.
Okay, thank you. So hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're joining. I'm Rinki and I will be taking you through the basic concepts of open access and the different publishing models that are offered by Elsevier. So let us start with what exactly is open access. I'm sure most of you would know, but just in case, so open access is the free and permanent access to scholarly research, and Elsevier being one of the fastest growing open access publishers. We have nearly 2,900 journals that enable open access publishing, with of which more than 800 are full open access journals. So what is our promise to authors? With it is so we are Elsevier is committed to serving our stakeholders' needs, and as part of this, we actively support open access to research. And the choice that we give to our authors is by offering the gold open access and green open access publishing models. Under the gold open access model, the final version of an article is immediately accessible to everyone, while under the green open access, the research that is published under the subscription model is made openly available after an embargo period. Now, when our authors choose one of these publishing models, we guarantee a seamless publishing experience through our online author communication system, which we refer to as OAKS. The author will be presented with the lowest possible article publishing charge, considering the existing agreements or any other discounts for which the authors might be eligible. Now, the moving on to the gold open access option in detail. So under the gold open access option, the individuals, funders, or institutions pay an article publishing charge to cover the cost of publishing. And these articles can be published either in full open access journals or in hybrid journals. As you would know, in hybrid journals, we do have the option of publishing both as open access and subscription articles. So when an article publishing charge is paid to cover the cost of publishing, it ensures the articles are made immediately and permanently available to the readers, and they do not have to pay to access the articles. Now, when the article is made open access, authors have the option to choose from a Creative Commons end user license, which defines the permitted use of the articles. So these are the different characteristics of the Gold Open Access publishing options. And then we also have the subscription option where there is no article publishing charge for the authors because the cost of publishing is covered by the institutional and individual subscribers who pay to receive access. However, we do have a green open access option, which is basically a peer reviewed version or the accepted article that can be posted by the author in a repository. And that happens after an embargo period, after which the readers can access it freely. And the embargo period varies with each journal. Now, the overview of the process. So when the author is submitting to Elsevier, they are requested to fill in the affiliation details of all the co-authors of the articles. Now, in full open access journals, the billing details are also requested because there is an article publishing charge involved. And once the author based on the affiliation details that are input by the author during submission, author would be presented with the publishing options in the EM or the Editorial Manager submission site based on the affiliation. So if there are any institutional agreements that would be presented during the submission process itself. And during after the article is accepted and moves to the production system, author would receive a link to complete or go through the publishing journey through our open access communication system or the OAK system to confirm the billing details and the affiliation details that were input during the submission process. So author completes the author journey in the OAK system, and depending on what publishing option is chosen, so if it's subscription option that was chosen by the author, which would be free of cost. If it's open access, then accordingly an invoice is generated. Now, in terms of fee waivers to support our researchers, so our goal is always to bridge the digital research divide and ensure that publishing in open access journal is accessible to authors in developing countries. So as part of this, we have the Research for Life program, which ensures APC waivers are automatically applied to articles in gold open access journals for where all the author groups are based in a country eligible as part of the Research for Life program. So there are Group A and Group B list, and we would also be sharing the links of these programs, which would help you in understanding which countries would be eligible for full waiver and which countries would be getting a 50% discount. Our waiving policy, however, does not apply to hybrid journals because authors do have an option in hybrid journals to publish under the subscription model at no cost. So there is a green open access option available in subscription journals, which is why the waiving policy is applicable only for gold open access journals. Now, moving on. So the this is a pictorial flow of the open access customer journey. So Elsevier has publishing agreements with multiple institutions, and every institution would have an open access administrator to manage the agreements that come through the Elsevier open access management portal. So when an author submits their research paper and when it is accepted, the author is prompted to visit the OAK system to choose their publishing option. So if it's subscription, there would not be any open access fee, and they would continue their journey and complete the publishing journey. However, if the author is choosing an open access publishing model, then the system would check whether the author is affiliated to an institution which has an open access agreement with Elsevier. If the author is not affiliated, then they would be shown the full article publishing charge, and the invoice would be generated, and author would have to make the payment and complete after choosing the license. But if the author is affiliated to an institution which has a publishing agreement with Elsevier, then the author will be informed that the institution will be asked to cover their article processing charge. So a validation request is sent to the open access administrator at the institution, who would validate the affiliation and then inform. So if the institutional APC payment is accepted, then this will be informed to the author, and the institution would cover the APC. However, if the validation is denied or rejected by the open access administrator, then the author would be informed that they would be responsible for paying the APC. And this is how, so this is a workflow that is followed during the publishing journey post acceptance. Now, moving forward, so my colleague Bharat would take you in detail through the different agreements and the rights and access form and the different options that the author would have in both hybrid and gold open access journals. So I'll just stop sharing, Bharat, and you can take it over.
Okay, so Rinki explained about a number of things about open access and how authors can publish open access within an agreement and outside an agreement. So what we will look at now is which agreements you can publish under. So there is a link on elsevier.com which gives you a list of all of the agreements institutions have with us worldwide. And you can see a copy of the page here. So once we look at this, we will look at the author journey. So how exactly authors can publish under an open access publishing agreement. And there's a number of transformative agreements in place. So by transformative agreement, what we mean is the APC, the article publishing charge for open access, is fully covered under the agreement. So before we jump into the author journey itself, so there are some definitions which would be good for you to understand on how the eligibility works for the agreements. So we'll start with the definitions. We will move on to the eligibility criteria. Then we will move on to the author journey itself when publishing under an agreement. So let's start with submitting corresponding author. So who do we call submitting corresponding author? So this is important because our transformative agreements are based on the corresponding author's affiliation. So the corresponding author must be affiliated with a participating institution in the publishing agreement to be eligible for the agreement. So who do we consider corresponding author? So this is the author who submits the article to Elsevier. They stay in touch with us during the end-to-end publishing journey, right from submission to after acceptance. And this author makes the publishing choice on behalf of the author group, whether they want to publish open access in a hybrid journal, open access in an open access journal. This author will make that decision on behalf of the author group. So please remember, there's one author or one author only, submitting corresponding author only per article who would be eligible for an agreement in place. So then acceptance date. So this is also important because majority of our agreements are around acceptance date of the article. So what this means is the journal, the acceptance date is the date the journal accepts the article for publication. So this is important for the eligibility. So we'll look at that in the detail slide in the upcoming slide deck. So then Elsevier Open Access Platform. So Rinki talked about this briefly, about Elsevier Open Access Platform. So when we have an agreement in place with your institution, so they will also have access to Elsevier Open Access Platform. So we onboard them to this platform where the institutions would validate the eligibility of the authors. So if you are an author, let's say from University of Amsterdam, for example, and then someone from University of Amsterdam would confirm that you as an author would be eligible for the agreement. And they use this platform to track performance of the agreement, to monitor how many the APC usage, how many articles are published under an agreement. So then this is, I think, an important slide on the eligibility criteria. So what makes you eligible for a publishing agreement? So there are 4 eligibility components we use to match authors to an agreement. So first of all, it's the acceptance date. We talked about this in detail in the last slide. So acceptance date should fall within the agreement period of the institution. So what I mean by that is, so let's say an agreement starts on 1st January 2025 with your institution and ends 31st December 2028. So for the 4-year period, so your article must be accepted during that period to be eligible. So then author affiliation. So we talked about this as well. So submitting corresponding author is the one who needs to be affiliated with a participating institution. So so you as an author will go through a submission journey, post-acceptance journey, will declare the affiliation. So that the affiliation will be used to match you to the publishing agreements. So if there is an agreement in place, we would show what that agreement entails. If there is no agreement in place, then we would show you the journal publishing options where you would be asked to pay an APC. So then journals. So we also have seen the agreements page, which gives you detailed about the agreements. It also lists the journals included in the agreement. And you as an author to be eligible, please check the agreements page first. So you must have submitted your article and gotten your article accepted in one of the participating journals in the agreement. So then article type. So these are basically article types, peer-reviewed article types where we offer open access. This is the standard across all Elsevier journals where we offer open access for peer-reviewed article types. And we have 12 article types that you can submit your article to and can choose to publish open access under that. Of course, the names will vary based on the journal itself. So you can refer to the guide for authors on the article types for the journal. However, they fall into one of these 12 article types. We will use this to determine whether we can offer you open access under the agreement or outside the agreement. Okay, so then we will look at how you as an author can publish under an agreement, assuming there is an agreement in place. So first of all, we will start with the editorial manager. So this is the submission journey. So when you're submitting your manuscript, what we ask you is to provide your affiliation details. So in this case, let's assume during the submission journey, this is part of editorial manager. During the submission of your manuscript, you will be asked to provide your affiliation details. And going back to the eligibility criteria, the submitting corresponding author must be affiliated with a participating institution. So in this case, it's Tulane University. So we have an agreement in place, Tulane University in the US. Once you select that, what we would tell the author is, please indicate your publishing options. So this is a hybrid journal, of course. A majority of our agreements have hybrid journals in place. You can also check this on agreements page. And a hybrid journal offers subscription as well as open access. So when there is an agreement in place, you would see the agreement details based on your affiliation. So you can see that with Tulane University, we have an agreement. So if I zoom this in a little bit, you can also see details about the agreement. So this is during submission, right? Your article has not been sent to peer review yet. This is very early stages. We would give you an indication of an agreement. So what we show here is a price box that tells you, okay, this is the price and for that particular article to publish open access, and the agreement will cover the article publishing charge. And to pay on validation by the institution is 0, which means your APC is fully covered. And we also give a text that tells you that you're affiliated with Tulane University, so you can publish open access free of charge under the agreement. And there is subscription option. So as Rinki alluded to, Subscription option is always free of charge for the author to publish in a hybrid journal. So in an open access journal itself, then you will only see the open access option at the top. Okay. Then we move on to what happens after acceptance. So this is a happy part, of course. Your journal has accepted your article for publication after it's been sent to peer review process. So you will receive a congratulatory email from us, congratulating, basically telling, congratulations, we've accepted your article for publication. Now, please complete the rights and access form. So this rights and access form is a unique link that takes you for your article to the platform that you're seeing on my screen. So here we would talk about the article. So you can see the article title at the top. There's author information, there's email address of the author, the journal you are publishing in, and all of the information that is relevant to the article you are publishing. So this link is sent to the submitting corresponding author who submitted the manuscript to Elsevier. Of course, for every article you publish with Elsevier, so once it's accepted, you will receive this link. And we have 97% of all authors accepted across Elsevier journals who complete the post-acceptance journey. So as an author, you surely understand how important it is to complete the rights and access form. So here is where you can make a final choice to publish open access either by paying yourself, or you can publish subscription in a hybrid journal, or you can publish under an agreement free of charge with open access. So you'll see the open access flow now, of course, in a hybrid journal and publishing under an agreement. So once you click on rights and access form, so going back to the submission journey, during submission, the author has already informed us they are affiliated with the Tulane University. So we auto-populate that information into the rights and access form. So you can already see Tulane University. Of course, you are still allowed to change the affiliation. So in case you have moved affiliations between submission and acceptance, you can also select a department. It doesn't matter. We will match you to the highest level. So what's important here is if you can't find your department or a faculty, just choosing the main institution is sufficient. And we also mentioned that as part of the hint, where we tell you that, yeah, so just selecting the main organization is sufficient. And once we hit on save and continue, so we also ask for co-author details, but then that's auto-populated if you provided them at submission. What I'm jumping into now is the publishing options page, which is the most important page, of course. So here we would show you two options, open access and subscription. So this is because it's a hybrid journal. For open access, we already presented you during submission that there is an agreement in place. We would show the same here, saying there's an agreement in place, APC is fully covered. And then on the right-hand side, you see the price box. So we want the price box to speak for itself, where we would tell this is the list price to publish open access. The agreement will cover the article publishing charge, and you as an author does not need to pay anything on validation by your institution. So you're clear to choose one of these options that suits you. So in majority of the cases, if there is a publishing agreement in place, we see authors selecting Gold Open Access. When there is no agreement in place, we will also look at that flow. So you will be asked to pay an article publishing charge. So we won't be mentioning anything about the agreement itself. There, in a hybrid title, you can publish subscription as well, free of charge. Okay, so once we've selected Gold Open Access, so then we would present you with licenses. For an open access article, selecting licenses is mandatory. So we offer 3 license options to our authors. So that is CC BY, CC BY NCND, and CC BY NC. So again, like the previous page, you have a choice to make as well. So you can choose whichever license works the best for you. So CC BY being more liberal license, and CC BY NCND and NC being more of a restrictive license. It defines how you want your readers to use the content once you publish the article. Okay, so once we choose the licenses, then we move on to the rights page. And this is where you would select the appropriate options. Usually, what you would select is you are the author who is signing on behalf of the author group. You can see I've gone with the default choices in this case, and this will define how the copyright statement for your article would look like on the article itself. And for open access, it's the authors who would retain the copyrights in majority of the cases, with a small exception on some society titles. Okay, so then once you have selected your copyrights, so there is a publishing agreement, and this publishing agreement is a 2-page one. So you can see the page going into the second one as well here. So what we would state here is a standard text. So depending on the license you have selected, the text is standard across all Elsevier published articles. There is, so you can go through this, and once you are happy with that, you can agree to the terms of the license agreement at the bottom. So once you've done that, and click on accept agreement. So what happens here is, so I've also put the narration on because this is important when you are publishing under an agreement. And here we would show the review order page. So review order page is, I call it a summary page, because basically we summarize all of the choices you have made as part of the post-acceptance author journey, the rights and access form. So you can see the funders you've selected. There is publishing option, so which is open access, and then the license CC BY as an author that has been chosen as well. So then you've got the price box on the right hand side, which tells you this is the list price, and the agreement will cover the APC, and there is no APC once the institution validates the request. So what happens here when you're publishing under agreement in terms of timelines and in terms of process? So first of all, once you click on finish, that completes the author journey. So corresponding authors and co-authors will receive a copy of the summary page via email, and your article becomes open access on ScienceDirect within 24 hours. So in other words, we don't wait for an institution to tell whether you are eligible. We publish your article as soon as you complete the rights and access form within 24 hours. Keeping the publication speed at mind, we understand how important it is for the authors to publish your article open access as soon as possible. So then the administrator at the institution will receive a notification within 48 hours, and they will have 3 weeks to tell whether the author is eligible or not eligible. If you are eligible, then of course your APC is fully covered. If you're not eligible, so you have a choice to either pay the APC yourself, or you can publish subscription in a hybrid journal free of charge. Okay, so that's how you can publish under a publishing agreement. And let's assume we don't have an agreement with your institution, so you can refer to agreements page to see which institutions we have agreements with. If there is no agreement in place, then of course we would present personalized publishing options based on that. So if when you're publishing, so the process pretty much looks the same. So what you've seen through the rights and access form will look the same. But what you will see in a hybrid journal is, of course, in hybrid title, open access followed by subscription. So here you can see there is nothing specific to an agreement because there is no agreement in place. And we would show the price that is applicable for the open access article on the right-hand side. And like Rinky earlier mentioned as well, so this price is the best possible price that's available for that particular article. So this varies between $500 to $10,000 depending on the journal you are publishing. And so I'll stop there because Joe, our colleague, will show you how you can publish outside an agreement and the invoicing process in detail. So happy to answer any questions you may have in the Q&A.
Fabulous. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'll be sharing with you some of the most common queries that researcher supported Elsevier receives with regards to invoicing and payments. And also we'll talk through how to ensure that your OE invoice is created right the first time, as well as highlighting author's responsibility when it comes to paying APCs. So one of the most common questions we receive from authors is the difference between selecting the payer type and the information needed for tax calculation and payment processes. So today I'd like to walk you through this and clarify those options as well as their impact on the invoicing process. When it comes to paying the article processing charges, APCs, authors are given two options during the rights and access process. You can select either option 1, which is bill an organization, and here you can designate an organization to receive the invoice and handle the payment. I'm specifically saying organization, not an institution, because there could be other organizations outside of your institution, university, for example, funding organization that could be making the payment for the cost of publication. You will notice that we are not like I said, we're not saying it's a bill an institution, but bill an organization. So we always have to distinguish that. So you don't have to worry about that your institution isn't that the option is not saying bill my institution or my university. We recognize different funders and payers as organizations that could be settling the bill. The second option is bill an individual, and here you're selecting someone who will pay on your behalf, or selecting yourself as an author to pay the invoice. You could also select a co-author or another authorized individual within your organization to make that payment. But please keep in mind, this is a business to consumer transaction, the bill an individual, and not business to business transaction. Why does this matter? Well, it does because different tax rules apply depending on which option you select. So let's break this down. We're going to look at selecting bill an organization. And one of the most important things is to make sure that the organization is aware of the upcoming invoice for the cost of the publication, and that the author has the correct billing address and relevant tax information for their organization. Tax regulations are quite specific. Most institutions and organizations are registered with tax authorities in their country, so they'll have a tax registration number. Some may even qualify for tax exemptions, and Elsevier needs to collect this tax-related information from organizations so we can calculate the correct tax amount to be shown on the invoice. We also have to pass those details along with the tax amount to the relevant authorities. But in the first part of the billing information page, the emphasis is on having the correct billing address for the payer or the relevant department, and the correct email address where the invoice is going to be sent. Most change requests that we receive for this part are the change of the billing address related to the organization. So again, just stretching emphasis here on making sure that you have the right billing address where the invoice is to be sent to. And staying with this option of billing an organization, let's take a look at the tax-related questions that author will be presented with next. So to ensure that our invoicing system can accurately calculate taxes that might be eligible for the transaction, it's essential for authors to be fully aware of their organization's tax status and be able to provide correct information on that page. In this example, we can see that the tax registration and the tax exemption question is answered as no, and the author can proceed to selecting their payment method. But it's relatively uncommon for organizations like universities, research institutions, or other establishments not to be tax registered, especially in countries with comprehensive tax system. So there are some exceptions as well. So some smaller institutions, non-profits or international organizations may not be subject to same tax registration requirements, and it depends on the country's tax laws. And as I mentioned, some may be even tax exempt, meaning they are registered, but they do not require to pay certain taxes like VAT or GST on specific transactions. And if at this stage author won't provide tax registration details or tax exemption certificate, invoice may not accurately reflect the tax information in the eyes of the paying organization, and it may need to be corrected. This is why it's, again, very important for authors to complete in the rights and access form to have correct information about their paying organization. If the author has the tax registration number at this stage for their paying organization, Elsevier will gather that information and validate where possible. So we can immediately validate tax registration numbers for organizations based in EU and in the UK. However, if the paying organization is located outside of those, a manual validation of the tax registration number is required before the payment can be processed. And in such cases, the card payment option will not be available. We'll look at the payment options in the next couple of slides. Also, a very important point to make here that when entering the tax registration number, it's essential to ensure they are formatted correctly, just as we have here in this pop-up information. It's crucial to avoid any spaces, special characters, hyphens, forward slashes, and just enter the tax registration as a single continuous string. Failure to do so will result in validation error by the automated validation system, and will delay the invoice creation and sending, as a manual validation will have to take place. In this particular example, we're using a tax registration number of a company based in Denmark known for producing popular interlocking blocks for both young and old. I'm not going to mention the name, but I wanted to use a real tax registration number just to show you the difference in the response, in the output, when you correctly input the tax registration. So in the first screenshot, you can see that the number is presented in standardized format without any special characters or spaces, and this allows the number to be successfully validated against the VAT information exchange system for the EU. And in the second screenshot, the number includes special characters and it prevents it from being validated. And as I mentioned, the author will receive a prompt to correct the input. However, if they fail to do so, the manual validation will have to take place. So the first screenshot will then allow the author to proceed immediately to selecting different payment methods. However, in a second example, because the tax registration couldn't be validated automatically, it will require a manual input by Elsevier member, and this will delay the creation of the invoice. Okay, so let's take a look at the tax exemption question. As I previously mentioned, certain organizations, institutions may qualify for exemption, and if they do, they will have a tax exemption certificate from their respective authorities. And authors who are aware of their of the organization's tax status are encouraged to provide that certificate at this stage by uploading it as it's shown on the screen in specific formats. The document will again have to go through a manual validation by a tax specialist at Elsevier. It will be securely stored for the purposes of sharing it with relevant tax authorities on request. And again, because of this additional manual validation, the invoice is also going to take slightly longer to be created and sent to the invoice payer. If, however, author is unaware at this stage of the tax exemption status for their organization, the invoice may include tax charges, and it could render it unacceptable by the organization. And it is, again, another very common invoice-related query, and our researcher support team is available to assist both organizations and authors in such cases and redo the validation and correct the invoice tax details. On the other hand, let's have a look where we go when we select bill an individual. In this case, the invoice is addressed, as I said, to a person, not an organization. So there is no need for tax registration number or tax exemption certificate. Selecting these options, as I previously stated, creates a business to consumer transaction. And it's important to note that billing an individual means that they're not exempt from paying tax, and they'll obviously won't have a tax registration number because it's not a business, it's an individual person to whom the invoice may be addressed. So let's say Jane Smith at the accounts payable department has been selected to receive the invoice. However, it's important to clarify that Jane will not be paying with her personal card as an individual. She will be a recipient of the invoice, which is addressed to her, but is issued to an organization as a business for payment. So when you think it's going to be Jane, but she's at my institution, please do not select bill an individual. If Jane is representative of the institution, you should always select bill an organization, and you can still specify an individual person who should be the recipient of the invoice. When you select bill an individual, it's an individual person with their individual card or individual bank account who will be making the payment for an APC. So, and understanding that distinction is really important because the tax calculations are different, and Elsevier recognizes the two as completely different transactions. As we said, bill to organization is a business to business, and bill an individual is business to consumer. Okay, so now that we've examined the difference between selecting organization versus individual and how this affects tax rules, let's summarize the information needed for accurate invoicing. Open access invoices are generated by an automated invoice system, and that system relies on the information inputted by the author during the completion of the rights and access form, as Bharat has talked us through the previous pages as well, but specifically for the paying in the billing purposes, the pages, the screenshots that we've just looked at. And to ensure that this invoice is accurate from the outset, it is very, very important for authors to or their representatives completing the rights and access form on their behalf to be well informed and confident in information provided for the billing purposes. And that includes confirming the billing address, informing the person responsible for settling the invoice about the forthcoming charges from Elsevier, and ensuring that applicable tax registration numbers and exemption statuses are gathered and verified before being entered into the rights and access form. But we understand that it is not always possible to obtain all this information at the time of ordering the open access. However, our researcher support team is, as I mentioned, always available for invoice corrections and assistance. But the more accurate information you can enter into the rights and access form, the easier it will be for us to generate that invoice right the first time. And now let's have a quick look at some other information. And I know that not everyone likes talking about terms and conditions, but the better we understand them, the better clarity and mutual understanding. So please direct your attention to the highlighted section on the review order page of the rights and access form on the left-hand side, the left-hand side screenshots you're seeing. It states that the ultimate responsibility for ensuring the invoice is paid rests with the author. It is an important note because while author may select an organization or another individual to pay the APC, it is the author's responsibility to ensure it is paid as the author enters into the contract with Elsevier for the publication of the article. Therefore, if the invoice is not settled on time, it may be the author that will be contacted and requested to act on the unpaid invoice by Elsevier. So for further payment responsibilities, we do encourage our authors to familiarize themselves with our terms and conditions, especially section 7.4 of the Elsevier terms and conditions for purchase of open access. So the understanding and the obligations related to the payments of APC is clear, and everyone fully acknowledges their involvement in settling the invoice should it be unpaid by the designated party. Okay, and now let's have a look at the actual options. So I've mentioned we're going to see some different payment options. And as you see here on this screenshot, we have payments via credit card, debit card, or option to send an invoice. We also have got an option for WeChat and Alipay for authors who are based in Asia and prefer this method payment. So once you've reviewed the terms and conditions and confirmed the order page, you will be able to select the preferable option. If you select an invoice, Elsevier has got 30 days payment terms, so that allows for the finance departments within the paying organization to process that payment request in accordance with their procedures. So again, selecting the payment option is driven by the payer and their preferred payment method. When you proceed with the card option, you will be redirected to our e-payment platform, requiring you to provide the card details or to log into Alipay or WeChat account. And to ensure that Elsevier can process your payment smoothly, please keep in mind the following points. So firstly, if you're using a business card, make sure there are sufficient funds available and there is no limit on the amount that can be charged in a single transaction. Many issues at this stage are related to exactly these factors. Secondly, some problems may arise due to security measures for the card not present transactions, and they're imposed by issuing bank or the card company. So if a transaction is declined, the best course of action is for the payer is to contact their bank to inquire about the reasons for the unsuccessful payment. Unfortunately, Elsevier does not receive any information from the card companies when the payment fails, and we are unable to override that decision. Therefore, speaking directly to your bank, speaking directly to your finance department or the card company to find out whether there was a block because there was a limit on single transaction payments, or whether there are additional security measures imposed by the card company is the best approach. There are some, as we've looked already, there are some situations where author will not be able to choose the card payment options. So let's take a look at them in details again. So we've seen, firstly, is the tax exemption. As we said, if a tax exemption is chosen, indicated, then the card payment will be grayed out. So please bear that in mind. If you've clicked, yes, my organization is tax exempt, the card option will not be available because the exemption certificate needs further verification. And same if you've entered the tax registration number with some special characters, or you've added again the country ISO code. So we see here DK. If you've added again a DK before 47, again that will fail. And in that case, you will also not be able to see the card payment. For the tax registration, it's easy to just go back and correct that. And if it goes through, then the card option will be available. But also, as I mentioned, for companies, organizations registered outside of EU or UK, the additional manual verification has to take place. And again, the card option will not be available for you to choose from. And let's finally look at the invoicing route. So where if you've selected to receive an invoice rather than do an instant pay via card, the invoice will be emailed as a PDF document attached to the email sent to the designated email address that you've provided in the billing section. At the bottom of the invoice, we can see two different payment options, a bank transfer or still an online payment. Yes, even after selecting an invoice, the payment can be done via card. Even if you haven't been able to select a card in a prior page because there was a need for additional verification. Once you've received this invoice, this verification would have been done and you will be able to proceed to card payment. Now, bank account numbers for Elsevier, registered address and tax registration number are shown for the bank transfer, but please note that account numbers and receiving bank may vary for different countries. So we have here a EU-based account, but there's going to be a US-based account. There could be an account based in India or Japan. So it depends on the receiving country. Elsevier will have slightly different receiving bank accounts for the transaction. And when you do pay via bank transfer using the invoice option, very, very important to add your invoice number as a reference for the correct payment recognition on our end and allocation of those funds towards your invoice. It's especially important when authors have published multiple articles and they've received multiple invoices. It's really very important to make sure that you tell us which invoice and which article the payment you're sending is for. And this is the end. We've now come to the end of my section, and I hope that you've found this information useful, helpful, and it gives you a better understanding of the different payment methods of open access charges, as well as different information based on the selecting a different payer and different tax regulation when it comes to those payers. So I'll now pass on to Navneetham, and thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure sharing this information with you. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our webinar today. Thank you for listening. After this session, we will send you an email that will contain some helpful links, including the webinar recording and some guides that relate directly to the topic today. Also, you can see in the chat section some useful resource links available related to open access. You can just collect those links and have it to your bookmarks. So please look out for that email. Please now complete the short poll that will appear on your screen before you could leave, because your answers will help us deliver more webinars like this one. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.